Will David Stearns let Luis Severino walk this offseason as he's seeking a multi-year deal to prioritize signing his replacement via the free agent market? We'll talk about just that right here on the True Mets Talk podcast. All right, Mets fans, welcome back to the channel. The Mets offseason rolls on. And even though I don't have my usual setup with me, I am recording this with no microphone. So I'll try to fine tune the audio as much as possible before I upload this. I am so very sorry. We are here to talk about this rotation and one potential name that could replace Luis Severino that makes the most situational sense and could be a mirror image of the situation that Luis Severino went through going from the Yankees to the Mets. But this time, this name would come over from the West Coast. I'm pretty sure you all know who that name is. But before we get into it, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you drop your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I want to hear what you all have to say. Now, we went over this in the previous live stream that we did, talking Mets offseason. I had a very special guest on. We talked about Luis Severino and the bounce back performance that he had in 2024 compared to 2023. And you see, he recently declined the qualifying offer, which was for 1 year, just around $21 million, a little bit over. And a lot of reports are stating that he is seeking a multi year deal, which is an absolute no brainer for him. And he will get that on the open market, whether it's from the Mets or somebody else. It all just depends on how many years he is going to be asking for. I would have to think he wants to maximize his money, and therefore he's going to aim big to go for that 4 year deal that you see on your screen. And Spotrac is projecting him at just that 4 years, $56 million. My first question to you all is, would you pay Luis Severino that? Because when I take a look at a rotation, especially with the Mets prospects that are coming up, especially with the free agent pitchers that are on the market right now, and how the Mets might approach that situation, 4 years to be tied into a guy that proved himself for one season, posting a 3.91 ERA and the most innings he's pitched being 182 since 2019 is a little bit of a risky move. And I know it's only $14 million per year. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things, but in terms of the actual rotation and the, allotment of roster spots that you have, do we really want to allocate 4 years worth of a roster spot to Luis Severino? And these are the decisions that us Mets fans are going to have to come to in terms of whether we want to see it happen. And the guy who is in charge of making these decisions, David Stearns, is going to have to look at the farm system, look at the free agent class in terms of what everyone else wants in terms of years, and make the best possible judgment on Luis Severino. But there is one name on this market that had a very down 2024 campaign, had a little bit of success, which we'll talk about here in just a second, in the playoffs this past go around, and he's on the West Coast, or at least he is currently before he signs a new deal, whether it's re-signing with his current team or going elsewhere. And yes, you guessed it, this is Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler entered this league in 2017. He was an all-star most recently in 2021, and that was his last season that he had the most sample size to his name, pitching 207 innings in that all-star campaign in 2021. But ever since 2021, it's been an absolute nightmare in 2022, 2023, where he didn't pitch at all, as you see on your screen, and in 2024, when he came back from an actual hip injury that sidelined him, and he kind of struggled, right? He was at first he was trying to make his way back from the elbow injury that kept him out all of 2023. Started off slow, had a hip injury that kept him out a couple months, and then started back up slow again as the season progressed on into the playoffs. And really, he found his groove in the playoffs with the Los Angeles Dodgers on their way to this World Series victory. Now, again, this is kind of a mirror image of the situation that Luis Severino was in the past couple of seasons. Being injured, not having that many innings thrown under his belt, not performing even in the innings that he was throwing in those seasons, and potentially taking that 1 year deal as Luis Severino did to prove himself and potentially go back onto the market to get a multi-year deal, which is what position Luis Severino's in right now, as we just talked about. The same thing could be said with Walker Buehler because this guy has electric stuff, and we've seen that since he's been in the league before sort of these injuries have plagued his career as of the last 3 seasons or the last 3 years. In 2024, you see the numbers in green: 75 innings pitched, just about a 5.38 ERA, right? He was trying to come back from the hip injury. Pitchers need time to get into a groove. And that's presumably all Walker Buehler needed, was just some time to get into that comfortability that he showed himself having in the 2024 playoffs for the Dodgers. Now, outside of one pretty ugly start against the Padres in that opening round for the Dodgers on their way to the World Series, where he started against the Padres, went 5 innings and allowed 6 earned runs. The next 4 outings were absolutely beautiful. And Mets fans, if you remember game 3 of the NLCS, he pitched 4 innings, shutting out the Mets with 6 strikeouts, and he was basically unhittable. And that's the version of Walker Buehler that we've seen in the past. We haven't seen it in quite some time, but with the right environment, with the change of scenery, maybe with the Mets coaching staff and the pitching coach, this guru and Jeremy Hefner, maybe the Mets can get him right, just like they got Luis Severino right this past season. And again, this season wasn't all on Jeremy Hefner in terms of fixing Luis Severino. Luis Severino put in the work. He got more quality sleep, which he attributed to some of his lack of success and failures in previous seasons was his sleep quality, and he put in the work himself. But a fine tuning from both sides, both the player and the coaching staff, could presumably create this perfect situation for Luis Severino to walk elsewhere and for the Mets to go a 2.0 route in terms of giving Walker Buehler a prove-it-year deal. Now, Walker Buehler's not going to be your co-ace. He's not going to be your number 2, and he's not going to be your number 3. I'm still in the boat of, if you sign Walker Buehler to this 1-year, $10.5 million valuation, which I'll talk about here in just a second, you still have to prioritize a co-ace, and you still probably have to bring back Sean Manaea to have the best possible rotation that you could throw out there in 2025. But again, look at the Savant Page in his all-star campaign in 2021. All red. The fastball velo, which really hasn't dipped at all, even given the elbow injury concerns. 95 consistently, right? The off-speed run value is there. You see, when he's at the top of his game, he's getting swing and miss, and he's getting hitters to chase. That's the type of skill set you want to bring into the door if you are a New York Mets front office, if you're the New York Mets front office, and if you're the New York Mets coaching staff, in terms of working with talent and just refining some of those things that have been going wrong. And you see the pitch usage: four-seam fastball predominantly from Walker Buehler in 2024 at 29%. He does have a cutter. He does have a knuckle curveball, which has found some success as well. It's such a unique pitch. And the sweeper, which he only threw for around 8%, has been his best off-speed pitch to date, whether it's in 2024, whether it was in 2022, or whether it was in 2021. Now, what's interesting to know about Walker Buehler in comparing his 2021 pitch metrics versus 2024 and even in 2022 is the spin rate and the actual induced vertical break that he has on 2 of his main pitches. One pitch that you do not see on here that he actually throws for also a high percentage of a clip, even more so than his sweeper, is his sinker. And that lost about 2 inches of induced vertical break from 2021 to most recently in 2024, and his four-seam fastball. He throws it for 95 miles per hour on average, right? That lost about 1.5 inches of induced vertical break between 2021 and 2024. So again, some of that lost IVB, some of the lost spin, I'm not really sure what that's attributed to, whether it's the arm issues, whether it's a differing or a differentiation in mechanics. That's something that the Mets coaching staff is going to have to work on him with. Because if you look at those 2 pitches, he had immense success with them when he was at the top of his game: the four-seam fastball and the sinker. And now in 2024, the four-seam was his worst pitch. Opponents were hitting over 340 against that four-seam fastball. So again, Walker Buehler is going to be a candidate for a prove-it type deal. Spotrac somehow has him valued at 1 year, $4 million for his next contract. I'm not sure what in the world kind of algorithms they have going on. This guy was making 8.5 million to Dodgers last season. And Luis Severino, right? We all know what he signed for last offseason for a prove it year deal, being 1 year, $13 million. I'm going to be generous and go right around 10.5 million to give him a nice little pay raise, but also keeping him under that Sevy value in terms of what his next contract is going to be. Now, it could also get up to $13 million. I don't think the Mets are going to pinch pennies if that is the case. But again, we have to be realistic, a lot more realistic than what Spotrac has him valued as. And the best part about this is, this fits into the timeline of the New York Mets rotation first and foremost, more so than giving Sevy a 4-year deal because you know what? Guess what? Worst case scenario is Walker Buehler comes over and he stinks, right? Maybe the Mets decide to retain him as a bullpen piece, and we've seen him come out of the bullpen in the 2024 playoffs and be effective, especially in that last game of the World Series. But if they want to cut ties with him at the deadline, if he's just not cutting it for the Mets in 2025, you can start to move on to your youthful prospects. And that's where this guy comes in, Brandon Sproat, who I think is going to have a contribution in some way, shape, or form in 2025 for the Mets. You see all these numbers that he was able to produce across 3 different levels. I understand that there's some concerns with those AAA numbers, but again, the tool set that he has and how quickly he is just rising through this farm system, this guy's going to make a contribution in 2025. And if Walker Buehler doesn't cut it, maybe the Mets take a chance on him and he doesn't perform as much as they thought they could or that they thought he could. This is where Brandon Sproat could come in. And your most recent second round pick in 2023, electric fastball, 97 to 98, can touch 100 miles per hour. It's an absolute no brainer. And again, the Mets just might be better off giving Walker Buehler this 1-year deal in as opposed to giving Sevy the 4 years. So Mets fans, let me know in the comment section down below. Sevy for 3 or 4 years or Walker Buehler, a 2.0 prove it year deal just as Sevy had last offseason. Which would you rather have? Continue to hit those thumbs up buttons if you enjoy this content and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Mets fans, peace.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.